Hey everyone, it's the Ioniq guy. Welcome to 2025. We're going to start off the year with a hot take. And I know that a lot of you are going to disagree with me, but I know some of you are going to agree with me. And that is that Hyundai's built-in navigation with charging stops is actually not that bad. Now, I know, I have been crapping on the system for the better part of 2 years now. And I will say there are some caveats. It does still have problems. They could make this so much better with just changing a couple of settings. So in today's video, let's talk about why I don't think it's as bad as I once did. So if you guys want to hear more, then stay tuned. Hey everyone, it's the Ioniq guy. If this is your first time here, my name's Corbin. I cover all things Hyundai, Kia, and Genesis EV related. So at the end of December, I decided to take my Ioniq 5 down to Apex, North Carolina for the soft opening of the new Iona Rechargery. Kyle Connor of Out of Spec Reviews was hosting the event, and there were going to be about 150 people or so there throughout the day, stress testing the new charging station. I said, you know what, this could be my last big road trip in my 2022 Ioniq 5 before I trade it in for the 2025 Ioniq 5. So I figured it would be a good opportunity to finally put the built-in navigation system with charging stop planning to the test. Because up until now, I really haven't tested it other than one brief trip to upstate New York, which was only a few hundred miles. This trip was going to be over 1,500 miles with at least 8 charging stops. So let's start out with some of the most basic stuff. Estimated arrival times. So based on the footage that I collected on this trip, they were relatively accurate. So my first charging stop in Connecticut, they estimated 8:33, actual arrival time 8:32. New Jersey stop, the estimate was 12:05, the actual arrival time 12:03. Maryland, they estimated 3 o'clock. I arrived at 3 o'clock. And then the Virginia stop, I didn't capture the estimated arrival time, so I don't have that data point. Next up is what was the estimated arrival percentage of the battery pack. So in Connecticut, they estimated 39. We arrived with 43. New Jersey, they estimated 27, arrived with 31. In Maryland, it estimated 21. We arrived at dead nuts 21. Same thing with Virginia. They estimated 17. We arrived with 17. Now, I will preface this by saying that these numbers are continually being updated as you drive. So the closer you get to your charging stop, the more accurate that number is going to be. And that is another good thing about the system is it is continually updating your charging stops. So for instance, when I left Boston for the road trip, it wanted me to stop at Buckland Hills Mall in Manchester, Connecticut. Now, I know because I've been driving my car for so long that I could have gone a lot further than that. So I wanted to push it more than the car did. Because it was a kind of warmer day for the winter time, I knew my efficiency was going to be better than it thought it was. So once we were on the highway cruising, our efficiency was pretty good. Now, when we were about 30 to 40 miles out from the Buckland Hills stop, it did reroute me to the one on the Berlin Turnpike. And we did arrive at that charging station with 43% state of charge. I personally would have pushed it and tried to make it to the North Haven Electrify America station, but for the purposes of this testing, I was following the system and did what it told me to. Battery conditioning also kicked on perfectly. I arrived at the charger with a 70-degree minimum temperature on the battery pack, which meant I could pull full charging power for that state of charge, which was about 201 kilowatts. Another thing that worked flawlessly was the estimated number of chargers available. So at every single charging stop at an Electrify America station, what was reflected in the car was actual reality when I arrived. Now, I can't speak to other networks like ChargePoint or EVgo or some of the even smaller chains, but for Electrify America, it seems like they are really tied into their data and it's actively changing that number as cars leave. For instance, the New Jersey station, when I was getting close to it, I saw that there were 0 chargers available, and then I would see 1 available, and then within a minute or two, as somebody plugged in and started charging, it would go back down to 0. So based on that information, I knew when I arrived there was going to be a line, and lo and behold, there was. It was about 4 cars long. So I did have to sit there for, I think, 25, 30 minutes, which really sucks. But for those of you who go to that station, you know that it's nice because there's basically just a line that forms, so there's no real confusion about who's next up to charge, so that is really nice. Now, another thing that the route planning system does is it tells you how long it's going to take to charge to get to the designated charge level. So the accuracy here is also pretty good. That first charging stop, it said 14 minutes. And in actuality, we charged for 14 minutes and 10 seconds. For the stop in New Jersey, it estimated 17 minutes, and it actually took 14 minutes and 55 seconds. And unfortunately, I don't have the estimated charge time for the next two charging stops, but they were both under 17 minutes. Maryland was 16 minutes and 10 seconds, and Virginia was 16 minutes and 38 seconds. And I will say that all of these charging stops, I went fully to 80% and then stopped the session. This was despite the system telling me that I only needed to go into the 70s. I just really wanted to go to 80 since I was getting full charging power at all these charging stops. And going from 73 to 80% is all of maybe a minute or two, so it's really not a big deal. Now, I didn't really collect much data on the way back because I was with my friend and we were just having a good time in the car. So in terms of adding charging stops, I'm actually really surprised how well it worked. I have been saying for so long that this system really sucks, and I've heard from some of you that say, no, it works pretty well. And I have just kind of sat in that camp of, I'd rather use Google Maps, I'd rather use Waze, which is still true. I still prefer looking at Google Maps and satellite view versus the kind of just stylized version of a map that Hyundai is using in their cars. But for just general navigation, it works fairly well. It does show traffic conditions and it will reroute you if, say, there's an accident or the road is closed or something. So I did cross-reference it with Google Maps as I was driving through Washington, D.C. at rush hour, and what the car was telling me to do was the same thing that Google Maps was telling me to do. So that made me feel a lot better about how it's actually routing you. Another thing that I really like about the built-in navigation is it always tells you where the next rest area is up in the top right corner of the map. I think that is so smart. I can't tell you how many times I'm on a drive with my fiance and she needs to use the restroom and I got to go digging into Google Maps to try and find a rest area. With this, I can just say, hey, can you just wait like another 8 miles until the next rest area because it's easy off, easy back on. You don't have to get off at an exit and go find a Dunkin' Donuts or a McDonald's or something. I just think this is a really smart feature. I also really like the split screen view where you can have navigation on one side and then on the other like third of the screen, you can have the media player. You can have more of the overview map that will kind of show when it's recalculating, or you can have your power draw screen, which shows you draw from the powertrain, electronics, battery conditioning. So that's really probably the easiest way to see when battery conditioning kicks on. The message on the driver display is pretty small, and something that I really wish that it did when battery conditioning does actually activate is just give a little tone, like a little ding or something, just to let me know, because I want to know that it activates. Is this way, if I'm still 20 minutes out, I can at least physically do something to get it going, whether it be rerouting or picking a different charging station. I just wanted to have something that allows me to know that I should do something. One other complaint is the fact that I can't run Google Maps or Waze or Apple Maps while also using the built-in navigation system. If you turn on Google Maps, it will disable the built-in route planning, which is a huge bummer. A lot of people would kind of like to run those in tandem with each other because Google Maps is probably going to be more apt to reroute you based on like an accident or something, and Waze even more so than that. I like Waze because I can see where police are, whether there's objects on the road, cars pulled over. The built-in navigation system doesn't have any of that. The next biggest issue with the navigation system is that it just doesn't have the information that it needs. So it doesn't have the most up-to-date charging stations. And when route planning, this is pretty critical. For instance, here on the Massachusetts Turnpike, every single rest area has some Autel DC fast chargers. Now, they're not super powerful, so you might not necessarily want to battery condition before you go to them because you're probably going to get full charging power even on a cold battery. But you still might want to look in the system and see what's available to you. And they're just not getting enough data as frequently as they need to. And hopefully with Hyundai now partnering in the future with Google to use their Maps API data for points of interest in the navigation system, maybe they will become a little bit more reliable. Just there's so many stations coming online these days that every single week there's more that you would potentially want to go to. The saddest part is that Hyundai's big investment in charging infrastructure known as Ioniq is not currently in the system, even though they have multiple stations open in North Carolina, Ohio, and more to come. You would think that because Hyundai's investing in this charging network, they would want priority to get these into their navigation system, but they're just not there. So the route planning can only be as good as the information that it has. Now, this is another problem that I've talked about before, and it doesn't seem like it's resolved with the new CCNC software system coming to 2025 Ioniq 5, EV6, EV9, new Kona electric. And that is the fact that when you do click on the little button that shows you your charging stops, instead of it starting at the top of the list and going down, it starts at the bottom and goes up. And many times if you have 3 or 4 charging stops, when it opens up that screen, you have to scroll down to the bottom to see your next charging stop. That is just terrible UI design. That needs to be fixed. So all in all, for the most part, all this is really good stuff, and this is the kind of stuff that you need with built-in route planning. So what is my big problem then? The problem is I want to use more of my battery pack, Hyundai. Please give me that option in the system. I don't want to leave my house with a fully charged battery and then stop and charge at 43%. That is dumb. I didn't get full charging speed. I could have made it to the next charger. I don't want to stop at 31%. I want to show up to a charger with 5%. Maybe even less. That cross-country road trip really poisoned me in terms of what I want to arrive at a charging station with, considering the number of times we rolled in at 0% or 5 miles past zero. I know Hyundai is being conservative here because they don't want to leave people stranded, but there are many charging stations coming online. And I have done this trip from Connecticut to Richmond, Virginia. On that trip, I made it with 2 charging stops, one in Delaware at the Wawa station there with Electrify America, and then the next one was basically in Richmond, Virginia. So I basically made it to Richmond in 1 charging stop. Granted, it was summer, it was a lot warmer, so efficiency was much higher than it was on this trip. But I'm pretty sure if I pushed the limits of this system, I could have made it to Richmond with probably just 2 charging stops. And tying in with this is the fact that Hyundai has their own limitation on when battery conditioning will activate. So on this trip, the lowest I saw it running at was 17% state of charge. After that, it completely shuts off. So they have imposed this own limitation on their system for whatever reason, even though the car can go another 20, 30, 40 miles, maybe even 50 miles. So Hyundai, I really think you guys have a great base system here. It just needs a nip here and a tuck there, and then it could really truly be a great system. But regardless of this, there is no limiting factor for being able to get one of these cars and road trip with it. I know a lot of you still have road trip anxiety, but get in the car, plan a route, see what it tells you to do. If you don't like its first charging stop and you know there's a charger on your way past that, just blow past it and it will reroute you to that charger, activate battery conditioning, and everything's good to go. And a lot of you have that free unlimited Electrify America charging that came with your Ioniq 5 for the next 2 years or so. So utilize it. Go into the filters of the car, say I only want to charge at Electrify America stations, let it plan the route. If there is a limiting distance there where you can't make it to another Electrify America station, it will plan an alternate charging stop. So you just have to be mindful of that. But at this point, I think any normie who's not an EV expert can get into this car, get to their final destination. You might have 1 or 2 extra charging stops, but when the car charges from 10 to 80% in 15 minutes, who really cares? I only charged for about an hour. So that is really not a lot of time. I needed to pee. So I was going to stop regardless. Now, some of you are probably screaming,
Corbin, a better route planner, use a better route planner.
I tried using a better route planner on the drive back, and I absolutely hated it, especially going through DC. It wanted me to just take the stupidest route, and I just didn't want to deal with it. And I also realized that I don't want to deal with having to switch between a better route planner and the built-in navigation system to activate battery conditioning, because guess what? If you use anything but the built-in navigation, battery conditioning will not automatically kick on. And until there is a button in the screen that I can push to activate battery conditioning, I don't think I'm going to use anything but the built-in route planning from here on out. So I just said, you know what, change of plans. We're just using the built-in navigation system the rest of the way home, and I was absolutely thrilled with the way it worked. So there you go. There's my hot take. All around, good working system, has some limitations, but besides those things, I can actually live with it. So if you guys like today's video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Check out my store at ioniqguy.com for accessories for your Hyundai, Kia, or Genesis EV. The door lock device is now available for Kia EV9 with a plug-and-play version. There's more versions coming for some other cars in the near future. Consider becoming a channel member for as little as $1 per month. For $3 per month for normal mode, you can get early access to all of my videos before they're publicly released to everybody else. And as always, I will see you guys in the next one.